This is Wickett on Wisconsin. My name's Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett. Hey, this is my almost instant reaction to the Packers win over the San Francisco 49ers. And look, this is a pretty difficult podcast to do. Because what am I supposed to say about that win over the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, that was a win over a B squad. That was a win over a practice squad. That was a win over a shell of an NFL franchise, especially a shell of an NFL franchise that went to the Super Bowl a year ago. You know what I mean? Like, I don't usually on Thursday night or Sunday night or Monday night games get to the podcast because, well, I have the 3 babies I stay home with. So I wake up pretty early and I go to bed right when the game ends so I can try to get some sleep. But like last night, I'm watching the game and they're destroying San Francisco. You know, like that was an ass kicking. That's not that. It felt like a preseason game. It really did. I mean, when you're talking about Nick Mullins and JaMychal Hasty and Richie Evans or whoever, Trent Taylor, I mean, it reminded you, watching the San Francisco 49ers reminded you of the open from Major League, remember? Or that part in Major League where they're going down the roster like Willie Hayes and Mitchell Friedman, and then they swear. I'm not going to swear, don't worry. But that's what the Niners roster looked like. So how can I come up with something insightful to say about the Packers win over Mitchell Friedman and Willie Hayes and all these guys? Like that, here's what I take out of it. And somebody made a mention of this to me on Twitter at Mike Wickett, and I appreciate it. And I totally agree with you. I don't know if the Packers are great. I don't know if the Packers are a true Super Bowl contender. I don't know if anybody in the NFC right now is the dominant force. I think Tampa is the best. I think they're in tier 1. You may have to put Seattle there. Maybe not. I don't know. But Green Bay is right there. I mean, they're, 6-2? 5-2 after the first half of the season or whatever they are. And somebody on Twitter said, look, you have to beat that team. That's all you can take away from it. And you're right. And it was 100% accurate. You have to come in and you squash that team. You don't let a team that's desperate, that's got a bunch of guys that are playing for jobs and careers, and maybe next year they're stacking, shelves at a grocery store, or maybe next year they're on another NFL roster. I mean, that's what that team is right now, because they don't have George Kittle or Jimmy Garoppolo or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk or Kendrick Bourne, the wide receiver who tested positive the day before the game, and actually has had a couple of negative tests since. They don't have Richard Sherman. They don't have Bosa. They don't have their roster. And so 34-17 was the final. It wasn't even that close. Aaron was great. Aaron Rodgers was great. Davante was great. I'm going to talk about Davante here because he had some interesting comments that I want to get into for Packers fans after the game. But, I mean, that's a game you're supposed to go out and beat down your opponent. I don't think you can thump your chest and say, hey, look, we beat the 49ers. That was the measuring stick game. It was supposed to be the measuring stick game. It had some of those players actually been healthy, and they weren't. You feel real good about it. But you went on the road. You didn't lose anybody major to injury. I know Jair had a concussion. I can't think of anybody else that really is injured and worry about for long term. But the Packers had the little mini bye here, so I expect Jair and everybody that can be healthy to play, including Allen Lazard, who had a chance to play yesterday, but did not play yesterday. Surprisingly, Aaron Jones did play yesterday. And I know they didn't have any other running backs because you had COVID protocol or COVID positive test for Jamal Williams and for A.J. Dillon, so they didn't really have anybody else. I mean, Tyler Ervin got a lot of run, and Aaron Jones actually got... First off, I was surprised that he actually played, and second of all, I was surprised Aaron Jones got as many touches and as much usage as he did. And somebody else on Twitter pointed out that really the Packers don't have anybody else to use in that situation. Okay, all right, so you got to play Aaron Jones. You're not going to give Tyler Ervin 60 carries, and you were up huge late, so you weren't going to throw the ball all around. I mean, Aaron sat out the end of the game. I mean, that was the kind of game that this was. But I'll tell you what, look at it, Aaron Jones coming off the calf injury, which, again, I'm a little surprised he played as much as he did. He looked good. He looked like Aaron Jones, and he's missed a couple of games, 2.5 games with the calf injury. And for a calf injury to heal quickly enough for a guy to come back and look that good, that's a great sign for Jones going forward, especially now that he gets a couple of extra days before their next contest. So, I mean, that's a positive to take out of it. And, you know, I'll run through the stats here in just a second. And it, you know, I happen to be someone who started JaMychal Hasty in fantasy football because everybody else was hurt. And he's the young guy. You figure he's going to get a lot of touches. And you know what? It was a bad move. It was a bad move. But I'm not going to sit here and talk about fantasy football, but I use that and say that this was the game that the Packers' run defense actually stepped up. Now, game script changed the way San Francisco had to play as they got down a couple of scores early in this game. And therefore, Nick Mullins had to throw the ball 35 times. I don't understand why they weren't running the ball down the Packers' throat early in this game. They let Nick Mullins throw a whole heck of a lot. And again, the game script got away, but the rush defense did actually play well as opposed to, and albeit a different beast in Dalvin Cook versus Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty, who carried the ball 16 times combined for 55 yards. That's a lot better effort than what you saw against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not a football expert, but this was better. And again, different level of talent, different game script, different situation, but it was good to see. Now, Nick Mullins did complete 22 of those 35 passes for 291. Somebody by the name of Richie James caught 9 of those balls for $184 and a score. I hope you added him in fantasy. I hope you took a flyer on him in your daily fantasy football, because that dude probably came really cheap, real cheap, like bargain basement cheap in your DFS. And Mullins was, I mean, he wasn't very good, but they stuck with him. His numbers, 291, a touchdown, and a pick. I mean, I don't know what you expect out of the Niners' backup quarterback with no receivers to throw to. Actually, those numbers are somewhat respectable. A lot of it came in garbage time. The game was already out of hand, but this was a dominant performance by the Green Bay Packers. That's what this was. And again, this was not a dominant performance over the Green Bay Packers. By the Green Bay Packers over the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC title game. This was a game where the Packers went out, kicked ass over an inferior, broken, decimated team, came home. That's it. And now I think I saw Kamal Martin had a positive COVID-19 test. Hopefully it's a false positive. Hopefully he passes whatever protocols. I don't understand all the rules. If it was the Big Ten, we wouldn't see Kamal Martin till after Thanksgiving. But it's not. It's the NFL. The rules are just a little bit different. So we'll have to wait and see. 34-17 the final. I don't, like I said from the beginning, this is going to be a difficult podcast to talk about because it's not that, oh, they won and I'm going to be totally fine. I don't have anything to dissect. No, there's a lot to take out of this, but there's nothing like driving home. Like when they lost to Tampa, it was easy to say, well, they had problems here and here. Same thing goes with the Minnesota podcast we did a week ago. That's not the case here with San Francisco, as they just kicked San Francisco's booty, and Aaron was really good, and, you know, he threw 4 touchdown passes on 25 of 31 for 305. Run through some stats here for you. His quarterback rating was 147. It's pretty good. Aaron Jones had 15 carries for 58 yards, also 5 catches, so he had 20 touches and 79 yards, was kept out of the end zone. Again, 20 touches, though, for a guy coming off a calf injury. I was a little skeptical of that. Plus, he was in the game late, and I thought, take a knee, punt, feed Irvin, whatever you got to do. Like, okay, you've had your run here. Dexter Williams, get him the football. I kind of was, if you saw me angry on Twitter at Mike Wickett, I was one of those that said, get Aaron Jones the heck out of the ball game. But he was fine. I mean, I haven't heard anything to come out that say he's going to be banged up, missing, questionable, any of that stuff for their next contest against is it Jacksonville, I believe, is who Green Bay plays next. And we'll talk about the schedule because it sets up nice. Receiving-wise, Davante was phenomenal. 10 catches for $173. He had the touchdown. The story of the game may have been Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 2 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1 catch was for 1 yard and a touchdown. 1 catch was for 53 yards. Check that, 52 yards and a touchdown. But he caught them. He did have a drop, and you could see Aaron was very upset with that drop. And I was like, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, to me, I don't know. I can't. I'm sick of living and dying with this. We just might have to live and die with this, but I'm sick of living and dying with MVS's drops because he leads the league in drops. He's got the highest drop rate in the National Football League. That's not good for your number 2 wide receiver. Get well, Allen Lazard. But he caught 2 yesterday. Maybe that boosts his confidence and can get him rolling in the future. And if you gambled and put money on MVS in your fantasy league, it paid off yesterday. Tyler Ervin had some catches. Aaron Jones, as mentioned, had catches. One apiece for Sternberger, Lewis, Shepard, and Tunyon. Mercedes Lewis with the other touchdown catch. So statistically, I mean, there were a lot of positives on the offense for the Packers. Defensively, what do you expect? They kind of handled San Francisco up front, which was nice to see. Preston Smith actually made a play in this game too. So that was big. He had a pressure that led to the 1 interception that was thrown by Nick Mullins, and I think every Packers fan was surprised to know that Preston Smith is still on this football team, which was great. It was great to see. So 34-17 over a skeleton San Francisco 49ers team. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but what are you going to do? What's your what are you going to take away from this? They can beat up on in a preseason game. Sure, absolutely they can. After the game, we talked about Davante Adams. After the game, Davante Adams was talking with the media, and I love this quote in this conversation because he was asked about being the best wide receiver in the National Football League.
I truly believe that, just based off of the work that I put in, the connection that I have between my quarterback. It's not just about me. I mean, just running a route and if the line isn't protecting or if the quarterback doesn't look your way or the other receivers don't do their part to pull defenders away, that's none of what I do can happen. So at the end of the day, I'll tell you, yes, absolutely. I think I'm the best wide receiver in the game, but there's a lot of things that go into me being able to make that statement.
All right, so it's tough to argue, I guess, if you start to look at this, of whether or not Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the National Football League. I mean, you can have that conversation, right? And everybody knows the names. Is it DeAndre Hopkins or Julio Jones? Calvin Ridley gets love. Tyreek Hill down in Kansas City. He makes the big touchdown catches. But Davante Adams never gets put in that conversation. And I don't know why Davante Adams is never part of that conversation in circles in the National Football League. I mean, here's some stats for you. Since week 3 of the 2016 season, Davante Adams is 4th in catches with 413 catches, 4th in yards, 5,206, and number 1 in touchdowns. That was going into last night's game. So obviously, catches bumped up, yards bumped up, touchdowns. He had another one on Thursday night. He's also currently tied for the NFL lead with 7 touchdown catches this season. Add another one, that makes 8, and he missed 2 games. I'll say that again. Davante Adams leads the National Football League in touchdown catches, but he's played in only 6 of the 8 games this year, or 5 of the 7 games, or whatever Green Bay's record. I can't believe I don't know Green Bay's record. But that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just to think about what he has done and gets no credit. None whatsoever. 6-2. I don't know why I keep saying 5-2. 6-2 for the Packers. It's ridiculous. Davante Adams has to be in that conversation. You can take your Michael Thomas and his 170 catches or whatever. Obviously, that New Orleans offense looks different without him. Julio Jones is fantastic. But when you start comparing numbers, and a lot of this has to do with the things he was talking about, his offensive line and especially his quarterback. But when you start comparing numbers, Davante Adams must be in that conversation for the best wide receiver in the National Football League. He does it all. I mean, he runs a deep route. He runs a cross route. He runs the sideline. I mean, that one that he had against on Thursday night against San Francisco, where he's coming across the field and there was a guy hanging all over him on fourth down, and he still caught it. I mean, I thought that was pass interference and a drop, and he still had it. I mean, Davante Adams, since coming out of college, has been, I know he had a rough start, but Davante Adams, I don't know if he's the best receiver in football. I'll take him. I'll take him on my team. I'll take Davante Adams on my team. That's for darn sure. And it's about time he starts getting some of that national respect. As for the rest of the Green Bay Packers, I got to tell you, I had this team at 6-2 in the first 8 back when we did season predictions. And I thought the back end of this schedule was cake. This was back in September in August, before the season began, when we weren't even sure we were going to have a season because of COVID-19. But I got to tell you, as I pick up my phone here to look at the rest of the schedule, the Packers' back half is the easiest schedule in the National Football League. Do you know that? The Green Bay Packers have the easiest schedule in the final half of the season in the NFL. And right now, they're in a decent position to get the number 1 seed. Remember, only one team gets a bye this year. One team at each conference because they expanded the playoffs. Packers have the Jags next, the 1-6 Jaguars. Then they go to the Colts. Then they host the Bears. Then they host the Eagles. Then they go to the Lions. Then they host the Panthers. Then they host Derrick Henry and the Titans. And then they go to the Bears. I would not be surprised to see another 6-2. I had him at 12-4 before the year began. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go 6-2 or better on the rest of the way out. Again, Jags, Colts, Bears, Eagles, Lions, Panthers, Titans, Bears. The game that scares me the most is the home game 2 days after Christmas against Derrick Henry. I mean, we saw what Dalvin Cook did, and who knows if Green Bay is going to be able to stop the monster that is Derrick Henry. The dude is just a freight train. I wouldn't want to tackle him, especially if it's going to be 0 degrees at Lambeau Field that day. 2 days after Christmas, you know it could be. 6-2 at the break. They get a mini bye here. Nice time for the mini bye. Alan Lazard should be back for that next game against the Jaguars. Not that they're going to need him. Gardner Minshew is done. They're starting a rookie this week. Not that I would be scared of Gardner Minshew, but just pointing it out that the normal quarterback will not be playing for Jacksonville when Green Bay suits up coming up a week from Sunday. So that schedule to me is very manageable. And I assume Seattle will trip up a time or two. I don't have Seattle's schedule in my head. Tampa has to play New Orleans. Tampa's got some tough games as well. So we'll keep an eye on this. But the Packers, 6-2, easiest schedule in the National Football League, the back half. The race should be nice for the number 1 seed and hopefully a bye for Green Bay in the NFL playoffs. Thank you so much for listening. Packers over the Niners, 34-17. This has been Wickett on Wisconsin. We'll definitely have some more in this mini bye week for you coming up as we continue on. Thanks for listening. Please tell a friend. We're on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And please make sure you rate and review the podcast so I can grow the podcast. I would appreciate that very, very much. Until next time, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers. Thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin. If you have any feedback or you want to reach out to the show, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Wickett Podcasts, or you can email MikeWickettPodcasts@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @Mike Wickett. Thanks to Silverman Sound Studios for providing the music for today's show. And you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Until next week, thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin.